All right, so for this game, it looks like we have what is largely a two-tiered sequencing game. There is a sequential component. We do care about the order of things, but for each position, we essentially care about two different things. What we care about is the actual advertiser and the length of the commercial. And what we're told is that essentially we're going to have 5 advertisers on the board. So all 5 of these guys, we have F, G, H, I, and K. They will each show up exactly once. They all have a short and a long version available, but they're only going to use one or the other. So basically it just means that each position is going to be one of those 5, and all 5 are going to show up somewhere, and each one is going to be either short or long. Let's go. First rule, the long versions of both G and K's commercials must be shown. So essentially G and K are both long. Next, the third commercial must be long, so 3 has to be long. We can plug that into the board, and that's kind of, I guess it could be either G or K, or perhaps still somebody else. Next, no 2 consecutive commercials can be long. Ooh, that's a big rule. So if we can't have 2 consecutive longs, then essentially that means that 2 and 4 are for sure gonna have to be short. Now, 1 and 5, I mean, short could still be next to each other. So 1 and 5 could perhaps still be long or short, but still, let's keep going. H must go later than I and immediately before K. So H is after I at some point, and H is immediately before K. And we know that K is a long commercial. That's kind of a big deal. In fact, that kind of raises that question of where could that HK block go? Because we can't go 1 and 2 because we can't land the K on a short. We could maybe do 2 and 3. 3 and 4 obviously wouldn't work for the same reason. K can't be a short. So really, the HK block is either going to go 2, 3, or 4, 5. There's only two major plays, and depending on that, you also might be influencing the I. So you know what? As usual, we exhaust. We have something incredibly limited and influential, so we're just going to run both possibilities. So either the HK block, as we said, is going to go into 2 and 3, or the HK block will have to go into 4 and 5, in which case we also know that the K has to be long, so 5 is long in that one. Now, top scenario, I has to go before the HK block, so that's kind of nice. Oh, and we also know that G has to be a long commercial, so G is not going to go in 4. G is going to have to go 5, and that's going to be long. And then who does that leave us with? F. F is going to have to be in 4, so that's kind of nice. Now, in the bottom scenario, let's label these once again. This is template A, template B. That feels like we have a bit more flexibility, don't we? Because G can still be a long commercial here, or potentially in number 1 as well, because we don't know the length of number 1. So I guess we could leave a reminder here that G at the very least is not going to go into 2, but it doesn't seem like we can do much more here. Everybody else is kind of flexible. All right, let's see what we can do with the questions. Question number 19. Which of the following could be the sequence first to last? Now, this one's not a complete exclusion question since we don't have the lengths. But you know what? Let's do a bit of an end run on this one. We have 2 major plays. Either we have the complete sequence figured out, or H and K will have to be the last 2 positions. So let's first look for that complete sequence. Do we have an answer choice that gives us I, H, K, F, G? And we do not. So that essentially means that it's this possibility that the answer will play on, whereby H and K are the last 2 positions. And it looks like B, D, and E get automatically disqualified. So that leaves us with answer choices A and C. So answer choice A, could we have F, G, I in those first 3? And no, because we can't have G in number 2. So answer choice A gets disqualified. And that leaves us with answer choice C as the only viable one for question number 19. Next, question number 20. If we have more shorts than longs, then, well, I guess if we have more short commercials than long ones, that's consistent with both possibilities, but in both instances, we would know that number 1 would have to be short. And I suppose in the second template, G would then have to go into position number 3. You know what? Let's try to keep that kind of in your head. See if we can run the answer choices based on that. The question is, what cannot be true? Answer choice A, F goes fourth, and no, that could have happened over here, so that could have been true. G goes first, and no, that's what we said could not have happened, because top template G is all the way down there, but even in the second template, if 1 is short, then G would have been forced into 3, because that's the only remaining long commercial, so there's no way for G to have gone first. The best answer to number 20 is B. Next, question 21. If the second commercial is I, then what's the latest F can go? Now, if the second commercial is I, that means that we're forced into template B, because here I is already in 1. So if I is over here, what's the latest that we could have F? Well, at that point, F and G can still kind of flip between these two positions, because G could go here and still be a long commercial. So we could have had an F in the third position, and that would have been the latest that F can go. So the best answer is C. The third position is the latest that the F could have gone. Next, question 22. If F is earlier than I, well, if we have F before I suppose once again, that forces us into the second template, because here F is already after the I. So if we have F before I, what does that tell us in the second template? Well, we know that G has to go either here or here. So really, you're either going to have G, Fi, or you're going to have Fi with G in 3. So again, maybe that's enough information. Hopefully it should be. The question asks the only positions where G could go, and I guess we already have the answer. G could go either in 1 or 3. The best answer to question 22 is A. Lastly, question 23. So we have a modifier. Which of the following, if we subbed in for the rule that no two consecutives can be long? So we're trying to replace essentially this rule over here. What would have the same impact on the game? Okay, well, let's try this out. Answer choice A. If the long version of I is shown, then the short version of H must be shown. Now, to be fair, that actually did have to be true because, well, somewhat trivially, H's short commercial is always shown, so H is always short, period. So regardless of whether anything to do with I is true, the short version of H is always the case. So that always had to be true, yes. But really the better question for this one is, what does that really do for us? I mean, even if that's true, first of all, this tells us that if we have I's long version in play, it doesn't tell us what happens if we have I's short version. And moreover, even if we have to show the short version of H, so what? Why does that really mean that longs can't be consecutive? I don't see any kind of angle. I don't see any reason that this would force L's to be separated. So, I mean, we can keep it open because we haven't really disproven it per se, but it doesn't seem like it does much. Answer choice B. G cannot immediately follow K. Now, again, that's technically true. G has never been after K, and here K was last. But, again, what does that really do? Even if G is not immediately after K, doesn't that still easily leave open that maybe long commercials could have been consecutive? This doesn't seem to have much of an impact on whether long commercials are consecutive. Answer choice C. At least 2 commercials must be short. And again, that's true. In both templates, we had at least 2 short commercials. But just so we're clear, the positioning of these 2 short commercials was based on the fact that we couldn't have long commercials together. But if we simply said that we have to have 2 short commercials, that wouldn't have forced them to go into 2 and 4. Couldn't then they have gone into something like 1 and 2? And then you could have all of the long commercials next to each other? I mean, that still seems to leave open the possibility that even if you have at least 2 short ones, the longs could still be consecutive. This doesn't seem to have much of an impact. Answer choice D. Both the first and the fifth commercials must be long. Now, if we say that 1 and 5 would have to be long, would that prevent? The thing is, I mean, we already know that 3, actually, wait a minute, that never had to be true. 1 didn't have to be long. So if this never had to be true in the first place, that's already a good enough reason to get rid of answer choice D. So D is definitely out. Lastly, answer choice E. Both the second and the fourth must be short. There we go. That definitely works. We definitely know that 2 and 4, incidentally, were always short. So this always had to be true. And moreover, If we implement this as a rule, that 2 and 4 will have to be short, well then yeah, there would be no way to have long commercials consecutively. So then it would force you to essentially to say that no long commercial would be consecutive. The best answer to question 23 then is E.